Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Chaldean Cultural Center weekly discussion series that's hosted by the Chaldean Cultural Center in collaboration with U of M, Detroit Center, Unique Voices in Films, and CMN TV. I'm your host, Wiam Nemu, and today our guest is Madelyn Porter. Hello, Madelyn.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
So we are still honoring and celebrating Black History Month, and Madelyn has accomplished so much. She is a 2019 KRESGE Arts in Detroit recipient. She's currently Connectivity and Engagement Manager at Detroit Public Theater. Her passion is Storyliving and education through the arts. Madelyn performs at the Henry Ford Greenfield Village, Detroit Historical Museum, Troy Historical Village, K through 12 schools, and tours one-woman shows nationwide. She is in the current production of August Wilson's Gem of the Ocean, playing at the Detroit Repertory Theatre. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, Madelyn,
Yes.
you're a very busy woman. You do a lot of things. And I'm so glad that you're going to be sharing some of the wonderful things that you're involved in. You know, we met at the Detroit Public Theater when the CCC was organizing a night at the theater for the Chaldean for the play Nora. That's
Yes.
how we met, right?
Yes.
And we didn't even have a meeting scheduled, but once I met you, we sat down, had coffee, and I think we sat there 2 hours on a Sunday.
We immediately connected. It was a beautiful, beautiful meeting.
I'll never forget that meeting. And then I didn't have your bio by the way, at that time. It was later that I was introduced to that. But I know from the way you spoke and your passion that you understand the power of storytelling.
Yes.
And you give power into that. And I kind of understood from now, from your bio, how you do what you do. But before I get into your life and how you got into your career, tell us a little bit about the Detroit Public Theater and how you got involved with them.
Well, I got involved with Detroit Public Theater in their second season. This is season 8. And the Detroit Public Theater was housed in the Orchestra Hall. We partnered with Detroit. I'm sitting in Detroit Historical Museum, so I'm thinking in my mind. I have a program immediately following this interview, which is wonderful.
You see what I mean? You see what I mean?
I'm sitting literally
We're very lucky that you have time to be sharing all of this with us.
I'm going to wrap up, tie up, and become a runaway in about 25 minutes. And I have a group of students touring the museum presently. But I got involved with Detroit Public Theater in their second season. They were doing a show called Dot. And I played Dot. And Dot, it addressed Alzheimer's. And I was in the stage of Alzheimer's where you know, but you don't want to know. Beautiful piece, which is a reason I work with the Detroit Public Theater, because they address issues, human issues, experiences, and stories that are so, so important for people to see, see up close and personal. And a lot of times you see yourself and you see other people and become more sensitive and culturally aware of other people in the universe, is the way I put it. And so I, ever since season 2, we were in Orchestra Hall. I have been with Detroit Public Theater in one way or the other. I started as an artist, as an actress, and then I became their house manager, or they would call me in to do programs, 48 Hours in Detroit, which is a beautiful piece that came out of Harlem. And 48 Hours, we put together 10 pieces, 3 artists and an actor, writer, director, and 3 artists. So 6 people work for 48 hours, and we put together a 10-minute piece. And it is the most beautiful experience. A story is told in 10 minutes, and 10 stories are told in 10 minutes. And it's a beautiful thing. And so I've done that several times because it has just been introduced to Detroit. And so, and through Detroit Public Theater. So it's a beautiful piece that you'll be hearing a lot about, I'm sure, if you haven't already. 48 hours. And right now, during season 2, the plan was in progress always to open our own home. And so we have. And so September of 2022, we opened our new home in Midtown Detroit. And it is wonderful. We gutted out a garage, an old historical garage, and turned it into Detroit Public Theater. And Nora was the second show in our new home. And I was introduced to, our new home has embraced so many different people from different walks of lives. So many different people have crossed our paths in our 8 seasons. But just since September, since we've been in our new home, well, I met the Chaldean Cultural Center. And I have a relationship with the Chaldean community in several ways. And I'm sure we'll get into that when we get into my little life, my little lovely life. And so that is my introduction to Detroit Public Theater. And I have been working with them in one way, form, or fashion. I have been doing a series of workshops in Detroit Public Schools, Renaissance, CAS, DSA, and we did a workshop at Cody High School, doing a pre-show workshop for Detroit 67, which is about the rebellion that took place in the city of Detroit, told through a story, a brother and a sister, their story, right at the epicenter of the rebellion. Uprising is what we call it, a rebellion, as opposed to riot, because there was a purpose and a cause behind that in that event. And so, yes, so I just love what Detroit Public Theater does. The engagement in the community, which is why I'm the connectivity and engagement manager, because I know the community so well. And I have been in this community, uprooted from Massachusetts to Detroit in elementary school.
And that's what I was going to ask you next. So if you can tell us about your childhood and how you ended up, in Michigan and your career path, tell us all of that and what led you to work on a community basis in this way. Like, what were the things that inspired you and all that?
Well, I was uprooted from Boston, Massachusetts, and I say uprooted because it was cultural shock as a kid for me. I was in elementary school, and my father is from New Orleans, Catholic, and so I came here as a Black Catholic kid in Detroit, and moved into I would say, well, my mother and father separated. My father is a jazz musician. He stayed in Massachusetts. My mother, so she moved the 6 of us here. And my mother converted to Catholicism when she married my father. And she loved the Catholic school. Well, a lot of things about it. Some things not so good, some things good. She loved their take and their outlook on education. And she taught in parochial schools. My mother was in education and eventually opened her own school through Catholic Youth Organization. She ran programs, became the director of their daycare program. She got her master's degree at Wayne State in early childhood education because she believed in starting, developing, and preventing many things and making many things happen from very early on. So she believed that to capture the community and the youth and the village or the children in their infancy and young stages, that will prevent a lot of things, negative things from happening in the future. So that was her take. And so I went to Catholic schools all the while. Well, since kids, well, I didn't do kindergarten. Massachusetts, it wasn't required, but from elementary school on. So I had Chaldean friends when I went to visitation. I was in a visitation parish. And in fact, at Nora, I met a classmate of mine, a Chaldean. She said, when were you at visitation? And we talked, we realized we're in the same class. Yeah, it was wonderful. George, the George family. And I remember them, and I remembered her so well. She was my classmate, and then she left and moved because many people left Detroit, especially after the rebellion. Many people left, but even just before that, when blacks were, after the migration, and blacks were moving out of Black Bottom because it had been ripped out open from the expressway that came through the freeway. So many people started dispersing out into the communities, many blacks, which forced many whites out. Or not forced, but they chose to leave. And so, but then there were some like the Yono family and the George family, and they were at visitation. And so I grew up as a Black Catholic in the city of Detroit, and I went to Catholic schools. And so that was a very interesting a dynamic in the community, because you were always looked at like, why are you Catholic? They're racist, aren't they? Well, there were racists everywhere. So you could not avoid that. So, but the smaller, right, the smaller classroom sizes, the intimacy of the learning experience was a lot. And yes, I did learn Latin. Although we don't speak it anymore, I had to learn Latin. So, and so that was my experience. And then my mother said when I was younger, even in Massachusetts, before we moved to Boston, when we were watching our beautiful black and white television, everything was black and white, but not the people on television. So I would look and I would mimic, what I would see on television. I liked, comedy, and I'd say, like, I Love Lucy. And I said, well, where are the black people? Mommy, where are the black people? Why can't we do that? And she said, oh, you will, and we will. And it's coming. And then you'd see people like Nat King Cole, Sammy Davis here or there, a little spark of Diana Carroll. And it started, and she said, well, you were born an actress. You've been acting ever since you were born. As a kid, you would perform for the family. I'd put on little things. We'd have nativity scenes, all kind of creative nativity scenes. And so we were, and so telling stories. My mother was my I'll never forget my fifth grade teacher at a Catholic school, because she taught in parochial schools before she did the daycare thing. And so when we'd come home from summer vacation and we had class, she would have everybody give their experience. And I would always make up a story. And the kids believed it. I told them about a trip we had through the Rockies, through the mountains, and I rode a horse, and I took them on a beach, and I gave them this experience. And the kids would always want me to tell these stories that I made up. And some of them were real, but I'd embellish. So I started telling stories, I guess, ever since I can remember. And then in the books that I would read as a child, I didn't see very many black people in those books. So I decided to tell the story from the black experience. And I thought it was very important to do that. And history, because my mother taught me and my father taught me many important figures in history. And so I started learning their stories and telling their stories and becoming those people. So that kind of led me into the arts. And my mother was into music history and into history and the arts. And so I put it all together, and it just worked out. I'm passionate about it, and I'm passionate about education through the arts. I think it's so important. When I work at Greenfield Village, when I go to the schools and do programming, and I live that history, the students really relate to it. They're like, oh, and I know I'm doing my job, and they literally say to me, oh, I'm so sorry. I hope the master doesn't treat you like that anymore. And they really relate and ask, well, was there really? And the students said they had never made the connection of enslavement in this country. And they never really think that it was real. It's so distant. And when they see it up close and personal, it's like, oh, then it really hits home. When I do Sojourner Truth and I speak on women's rights and civil rights, and I become Sojourner Truth, and the students are like, oh, that's not Harriet Tubman. Oh, it's another one. So it doesn't resonate, it doesn't really click until they can just that live up close and personal experience I'm passionate about, and the students receive it so well. And adults, I am just amazed at the adults that don't understand history or no history, or really embraced it. And so, and once you understand where you come from and what transpired and things that took place, then it really makes sense. I think you're a little more sensitive to what's going on and why things are the way they are. It makes a difference to know there were abolitionists and there were Quakers and there were people that really believed in and were adamant that anti, slavery. So, and not just slavery, but anti-racism. Yes,
And what you're just saying, I think that's what really got us to connect that day. It was our stories. So everything now that you're telling me, based on you knowing your past, who you are, and then being open to listening to somebody else's, a lot of the things that you said, if we just listen to each other rather than just use all these titles to stop the conversation, a lot of the things that you said, I felt like, oh yeah, that's how, I grew up not seeing myself in films. I grew up not seeing myself in stories, even though I might look white, but no, my background was totally different. But I was able to read books about different communities, and I was able to connect because the storyteller was able to provide from the heart, from like a sensitive point of view, different points of views, and the human aspect of being of our stories. I think that's the one thing that stories have, is a human element that we all share. We can put all these different titles. I can say I'm Chaldean American, I'm this, I'm Iraqi, whatever. But really, if when I die, I'm a human who died,
that's right.
right? At the end, when I'm gonna die, when you give birth, when you do anything, you are doing it as a human being. I'm not giving birth any differently than a black person, woman, Hispanic women. This is a human experience, and
Variance.
that's what I felt when we were sharing. I saw whatever you were telling me in the passion, understanding who you are, but being so open and loving toward others. That's the only way we're going to receive each other's stories.
And
In
that's
my
why
opinion.
Nora, and that's why the human experience,
Yes.
because in even in today's world, the Chaldean community, which is why I was glad it was brought together. I mean, for the audience to see, especially the Black audience, who look at the Chaldean community in the stores, and it's like, oh well, they're in our community, they're at the liquor store, and now they're at the dispensary. Oh well, and so to understand the human experience, to go, oh, their Thanksgiving and their holidays are just like ours. You
And we
know,
we have issues that you might not
same
see until
issues.
you come into our homes, but we have a lot of issues.
Oh yeah, and we're human. They're human experiences. Is when you see someone's story, which is why I love story living, up close and personal. You can relate in so many ways and realize that we are, like you said, we all share so many human experiences, and we are so much more alike than we know and
So
that we realize.
then what does living mean really? That's to me like it's kind of a new word. And how have you used it to educate?
Story living means exactly what it says, living a story. I'm doing Gem of the Ocean at Detroit Historical Museum, and I am living in body a woman who says she's 300 years old. Well, that's what she was told, 285, she says, by my count. And I don't want to give it away because some people, you may be coming to see the show, and I don't want to give it away. But I embody history, that much history, so much history, and the different people that come through. I embody all the history that we have held from the Underground Railroad, and this takes place in 1904. So it's giving history, but you look at that year and you're like, things are a lot. Are they the same? Are they different? Have they changed? These, we migrated from Africa. Many of us came from over here from Africa, our ancestors, and what transpired after that. says a whole lot and reaches out. And you see many different facets of the community right there in 1904 that you still see today. Just to show that, there's good, bad, and ugly in every community. And so to understand that we understand and that, we are one human race, but we all have our own, countenance and characters and beliefs and ideals and values. And so the story living is so important to me. And what it means is literally living a story to if I don't want to say perform, yes, because it is being performed, but to share that experience through the art of theater, and to perform it and present it as the actual person living that. I don't know if I'm saying that correct, if it makes sense to you, but living that
It
that
makes sense.
experience.
Well, my next
Yes,
question, I feel like there's no reason to even ask it because this is your everyday thing. Is this, how do you celebrate or experience Black History Month? And I'm thinking, Madeline and a lot of people like you guys are celebrating it every
every
day.
day, every
Every
day. So
day
to hear
by
Black
who
History
you
Month
are. You're
is
not
maybe
reserving
honored
1 month. You are celebrating. You
every
are
single day,
expressing Black history every
every
single day.
single day. There is
And that's
not
what we
like,
need. We need more
yeah,
that of that daily celebration, to understand and to learn, to go into each other's homes, to learn and to hear the heart. Like a lot of the things, we come from we experience something different from the region we came from. So for us, learning about what the blacks went through, the Native Americans, we read it through books, but you know what, the best experience is through the one-to-one interaction,
that's
and
right.
and having friends and relationships that you see over time. Sometimes people just focus on a 1 day celebration and which I
No,
think is great, because to have
you
that
can
1 day
honor,
to
right?
honor,
To
exactly, like
honor.
you for the I gotta bring this up for Martin Luther King birthday.
Let me, listening audience, Martin Luther King Day, I invited my dear friend to come and share her book Pomegranate, of course, but just to speak. Because I wanted to share, it was in Hamtramck, and I am the president of the Concerned Women of Hamtramck, and that community is largely Muslim, and there are Christians, and it's a mix. And I just want to say it was so beautifully done and well received. Your words were just reached out, just your message. So I wanted that to be heard. And the superintendent and a few other people have come to me and said, thank you. Thank you. We need to hear that embracing, because the Muslim and Christian community can be intense at times. And I just thought that was a beautiful, and I was thanked by many, and so many people. The Black minister said thank you, because that needed to be heard, and he needed to hear it.
Thank you so much for saying that. First of all, I appreciated that you invited me to speak. And I appreciated also what you said about segregation. I want you to kind of say something about that, because one of the questions is, what role can people take to be better stewards of justice and community? And when I heard you speak that day you said something about segregation that I haven't heard somebody bring it in that way, because you said segregation wasn't about just how about the blacks and the whites, but then you were now bringing into perspective into how sometimes we are using it today in a way that's harmful to our communities.
Yes, and I see it in Hamtramck through religion, and that goes for every race and culture of every aspect and denomination of religion. To separate ourselves, to segregate ourselves, that is a problem in communities. And I think that it's a new forms of segregation going on that has got to cease. And I think that will bring the communities together. And you think about different countries and around the world that are having religious strife, and we don't, and it's always been here as well, but now there are so many different other cultures that are here bringing different ideals and traditions, and segregating themselves in different ways. So I think that is important for us to be aware of, and to make sure we don't let that happen, because
Yeah,
that can be
that
a whole nother
message, I
problem.
felt like, yeah, like you took that message that day. So as we honor the past, it's also trying to understand, okay, how do we apply that message to today? Because what's the use if we get stuck in the past, right? Because if I want to hold on to certain resentments of what happened to my ancestors or ancestral land, I'm not going to move forward. I'm not going to plant new seeds. I'm not going to create a new story. There's no opportunity for a new story if I'm stuck there. It
That's
doesn't
right.
mean that we deny what happened. No, we actually, by sharing the story, there's a lot of healing. But then there's a point of moving on, and not to segregate myself from any historical story that happened. So I found that so profound. It really stuck to my mind because it was the first time that I heard it in a way that I think it's like, okay, what do we really take from that? And not just as a black or white person or green or purple or whatever but as humans, because
That's right.
I know we have a lot of we have segregations between men and women. We have, like you
That's
said, between religions. So if I'm just going to look at Martin
sexuality,
Luther King,
gender.
Dr. Martin Luther King, as
Yes.
just a certain type of people, then I'm going to be thinking like, oh, I don't really fit, I don't need to hear that because I'm not part of that. No, we're all part of that. We're all
Yes.
segregate ourselves in a certain way. I thought that was an amazing message, Madeline.
Thank you. Thank you. And I've got to just peep up. I have about 100 kids gathering. Hold on 1 minute. And I need to let them know.
Let them know you'll be out in a couple of minutes.
Uh-huh.
We just want to hear parting thoughts, where people can view your show, what the show that you're in right now, the play, and just some parting thoughts, please.
The show is called Gem of the Ocean. It's at Detroit Repertory Theatre. It runs until March the 5th, and it runs Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Tickets are selling. A lot of the dates are sold out, so come see it. It is a beautiful, spiritual, ancestral. It's a wonderful piece. It just has so much going on. And I am at Detroit Public Theater right now. We're doing a piece called Peculiar Patriot, and the Patriot is peculiar. It is a beautiful one woman show that I highly recommend people come to see. It deals with the incarcerated, past the pipeline, school to the pipeline to prison. It is more of the returning citizens and those that are on the other side and avoiding, because incarceration happens in every community on every level. And so, and this woman handles it in a very peculiar way. So I say that, and I leave you with these words, because I've got to go. I've got an audience sitting here looking like, where is she? And it goes like this: your world is as big as you make it. I know, for I used to abide in the narrowest nest in a corner, with my wings pressed close to my side. But I sighted the distant horizon where the skyline encircles the sea, and I throbbed with a burning desire to travel this immensity. I battered the cordons around me and cradled my wings on the breeze and soared to the uttermost reaches with rapture, with power, with ease. Your world is as big as you make it. I thank you all. I've got to go and put on my costume. Thank you. I will see you soon, and I hope to see you at Detroit Repertory Theatre and Detroit Public Theater.
We will
Thank you.
definitely see each other again. God bless. Take care. Bye
God
bye.
bless you.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.